as entrepreneurs, we're all hearing about big data and all the opportunities. Well, I got to tell you, many entrepreneurs, particularly small and mid-sized businesses, are going, what data? How do we bring this all together and make and use the technology we have, the expertise out there? And I have an amazing entrepreneur for you today who's going to guide us through it. He's helped me a lot, and I know he's going to help you a lot. He's really making a difference in this data world. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Experify, and you'll learn a little bit more about that because he's bringing together data scientists for us. He's got a PhD from Harvard. He also taught there for 2 years. He's been on Wall Street working with many of the banks, and he really worked and helped with Citibank on the whole venture portfolio. So he knows what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and he really understands the data marketplace and how we can use that. And that's what we're all about here. I'm John Bowen at AES Nation. We're all about accelerating your success. And one of the biggest opportunities you're ever going to have is collecting and using data correctly. Stay tuned. You're going to learn and be able to do it.
Ordinary success? No way. You want amazing, remarkable, exceptional breakthroughs. Dig deep, think bold, drive hard, watch yourself soar beyond your dreams. AESNation.com.
Harpreet Singh, I appreciate you very much joining us. The last time we were together, we were at Peter Diamandis' Abundance 360 Mastermind group, at least when we were physically together. We've been on the phone since then. But I was just blown away with your presentation. So thank you for joining us and sharing your insights with my fellow entrepreneurs.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, and Harpreet, you're doing some amazing things on data. I mean, I'm learning so much, and I'm really having a lot of fun as an entrepreneur because so much of the stuff, particularly on marketing or any part of our businesses, kind of used to be we put our finger in the air, see how things were going, and now the collection of data is just amazing. And you're going to help us with a lot of the insights, but I want to get the backstory. I always like starting with the backstory. How did you get to where you are? Co-leading this company and really being pretty disruptive out there.
Yeah, so the data is the new oil, but I didn't start with data in the beginning. I was interested in building expert networks, expert marketplaces, and my first venture was Academic Room, which I also began out of the Harvard Innovation Lab with my co-founder Sarabjot Kaur. And the idea was that every business is struggling to find subject matter expertise. So if we could curate experts within various disciplines and also curate their knowledge, it would be an amazing platform. So we started doing that. We ended up with 25,000 PhDs across disciplines on Academic Room. And the hiccup was that we weren't able to monetize that expert network because it was so horizontal. So we pivoted from Academic Room and we started looking at some of the big trends. And as we know, data is doubling, tripling every two years, and it's really exploding in terms of the amount of data that can be collected today, and also because storage prices are coming down, organizations are collecting more data, and so we saw a big opportunity there to create a marketplace that would again have these subject matter experts, thought leaders, who could help organizations either get started on their journey to become data driven or to analyze the data they have. And much of this is about big data. And big data, it consists of three things: that there is a diversity of data, different kinds of data that is coming in. There is data coming at a very high velocity, and the the kind of data that we have is, it cannot be quantified with the traditional sources. So a lot of the data is unstructured. So it requires new forms of tools and understanding to arrive at a better analysis of this data. And once we bring together different kinds of data, the insights we receive are very different than the traditional ways in which data was analyzed. So we found this to be an exciting opportunity, and we established Xperify. We launched about 11 months ago, and we've seen explosive growth since then.
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, when you were sharing the insights with us at Abundance 360, it's one of the things over the last about 5-6 years, I've really become interested in data more. I've always been interested in from the investment world. You wanted that, and we were so analytical on that side. But now, because everything's so much on the web and the internet, the flow of data, and you talked about storage. Matter of fact, Pri, what I'd like to do is just put up the slide that you gave me on the scarcity of data science talent. You mentioned this, but I mean, data, I know just the sheer volume of, I've got a few businesses, the data that we're generating now, I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. And it's doubling, worldwide every 18 months. And I think the big thing here you show is that only 1% of the data is analyzed, because it's one thing to collect data and store it. It's another to do something about it. And that's what we're really going to talk about today. But the other part, I took 3 years of statistics in college, and I have an undergraduate in econometrics, so a little knowledgeable in programming and so on. I got to tell you, I'm struggling with this, and the need for specialists is just so high. And you show, the scarcity numbers. I mean, this is a pretty big deal, and I'll put up the other slide on global imbalance and just share that. And I thought, this was where you woke me up, where where the need is in blue and all the talent is in green. There's a mismatch that's going on here, right? And is that really what kind of brought you and your team together?
Yeah. So there was a very interesting McKinsey report in 2011 that predicted that by 2018. There would be a scarcity of 190,000 data scientists in the U.S. alone, and a more staggering number is that there is going to be a scarcity of 1.5 million managers who are capable of analytical decision making. And the problem is that most of the organizations really need to reinvent themselves and educate their senior management about what big data is, how do you become data driven, how do you compete using the power of data. So that was one aspect. The other was really that Harvard Business Review and others have talked about this new job role of a data scientist, and they call this the sexiest profession of the 21st century. And no one could have imagined that someone who does statistics and mathematics and programming, that person could be described in this manner. So these are changes that we hadn't anticipated perhaps a decade ago that are occurring right now.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of the movie Revenge of the Nerds, and I mean that with a tremendous amount of respect. That it's so valuable having the insights, of a data scientist. And what's happened, I mean, in our group, I might just take one application where normally marketing, that is one that it's just so easy to kind of go with your gut. And every marketing meeting, we get the summary of the data. And when we get into discussions on whether you should do this or do that, we say, do both. Test it, and split test, and I mean, just the knowledge, the knowledge we're gaining, and in your presentation showed me that we're only just touching it a tiny bit, how we're using it. And I wanted to share kind of, what I've been learning from you with the rest of our entrepreneurial audience, whether they're listening to it or on the video. And maybe let's talk about how in the small, mid-sized businesses, because we've got the big one. You worked with Citibank. I mean, Citibank, I've done some consulting with, worked with a number of their top people. They got a lot of data, and there's some pretty smart people. They're using the data and so on. Maybe not. None of us, I think, are using it as well as we could. But they're using it. So many of the small business, mid-sized businesses are just kind of getting started on this journey. How do you help them think through, big data is pretty scary when they're not sure what to do with anything that they're getting?
Yeah, no, I think for many entrepreneurs, big data, especially in the small to mid-sized companies, big data is not very relevant, at least today. And the first step would be to create a culture within the organization where data is valued, so that the organization is progressively becoming data driven. And the way you do that is you ask yourself, what are the key metrics? What are the key performance indicators that I should be tracking on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, or a weekly basis, and then set systems in place so that you're collecting the right kind of data to track those metrics. So it could be your revenue numbers, could be the number of customers you're acquiring. It could be certain operational expenses or number of center calls you're receiving with complaints and so forth. So if you can define what those are, that'll help you grow your business. And then the next step would be to build a bunch of dashboards that every morning you turn on your computer, you come to the office, you look at those dashboards, you look at them with your management team during your management meetings, and then those enable you to focus on decision making that is informed by these metrics. So that is the first step. And the challenge is that businesses are not collecting the right kind of data. It's there, it exists, but it's often lost, right? So how do you put together databases, data warehouses that bring in that data, and then once you have it in one central repository, then it's very easy to create these dashboards and measure your company's performance against those.
One of the things I was surprised on the whole doing this is one, as I said, about 5 or 6 years ago, I got really excited about doing it for all my businesses, central databases, the whole thing. That initially, getting the senior team behind that, I mean, does take some leadership. They're wondering, there's some expense in bringing, putting this all in place. But I'll tell you, even my, particularly some of my marketing salespeople were not that excited about it. I think the sales the most because, we're going to be much more accountable in everything that we're doing. And the operational people are probably much more, they're wondering whether the expense was right. And I got to tell you, within about 6 months, I think the sales guys would have hugged me and kissed me. And they all of a sudden seeing the data, see what worked, be able to understand who are the right clients and some of the behavioral things, and then, what's working, what's not, so we can make the right investments. It was shocking to me. I didn't know that it would be that powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, very, very true. And, we on Experify, we have a lot of projects that pertain to sales and marketing analytics. And, we have clients that are trying to measure the success of their direct mail, for example. Right? This is, again, doesn't just apply to the large companies, even the smaller businesses that are trying to acquire customers through direct mail, right? They're sending out thousands and millions of postcards or mailers without knowing, who the customer is, and if you can segment your customers, if you can understand what the customer profile looks like, then you can go back to your database of these million contacts and say that, I don't need to mail this out to all million of them. Let me target the ones that'll have the highest response rate. So, you can look at a reduction in expense. So, we have a client sending out 1 million of these every other month, and we are going to reduce that number to 250,000 to 500,000. So it's almost the saving is staggering, right? The amount of money this client is going to save, because he's only able to do that because he knows what the client profile looks like, right? Then you can use the demographic data, you can enrich the existing data from external sources as well, and then go back to your database and narrow down your targets, like who you're going to contact.
Yeah, I've been amazed at the cost saving and just, some of it is, the segmentation clearly is a big part of it, and understanding who the clients are. And the other is just, not wasted energy, on really, you're not wasting, the prospective client who really is a very good perspective, and the salespeople. And so, you can create campaigns based on the desires that your target market has, and then our productivity has just gone up. Really, I don't know if it's been exponentially, but it's significant. And this is what I want to make sure our fellow entrepreneurs know. If they're collecting the data, it's one thing to collect it. The dashboards are really powerful. I like to see green lights everywhere. And when it identifies problems, the split testing, and what now we're talking with you're going to help us on some of the other parts, where as we see who clients are. There's I think you called it the client churn. When somebody's working with you and then leaves, you can use data to predict that and be able to make sure you address the challenge before it's a challenge. The ability to understand, as you were saying, who are the right prospective clients for the service, and get that. All of a sudden you start looking at this. This is huge value.
Yeah, and then the churn question is, again, very interesting. We've got a client that has these health clubs, all over the world, and the question is, how do you determine who's going to churn? So instead of waiting until someone leaves, you start to nurture them before they leave, and this falls under predictive analytics, where you're trying to predict, who's going to leave. And you give them the right offers to give them the better service, so that you can retain them. So that's applicable to many businesses, even if they are online SaaS-based platforms that are offering services, subscription-based platforms.
Mm-hmm.
If you can figure out what the indicators are that someone is not using your service, right? If someone hasn't logged into your website for a month or 2 months, that means they're not deriving the full value out of what you have to offer. Then you need to figure out, how do you re-engage that person? Perhaps it's through customer service, perhaps it's through some other means. So, but having those the data in place and having the ability to predict these things is really important for businesses to stay competitive.
Well, let's talk about, one of the big challenges is, okay, let's say, we get it. Any of our fellow entrepreneurs, nobody's going to argue that these aren't valuable. You can lower your attrition rate dramatically, retention rates sky high, getting the right clients to just line up to work with you because now you know where they are, and doing the right campaigns. This is, for everybody listening, this is worth, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, maybe for a few billions of dollars. This is big. But it's one thing to get it in concept, get the broad strategy, start putting it in place is another, and execute it. How do you work with, how do you find the right people to work with you to take you, help you through, your team through this? Because it is invaluable. It does take a little time, effort, and you got to have the right talented people, because I've found many times in my life when I hire somebody who's the wrong person, it becomes unbelievably expensive.
Yeah, yeah. So the philosophy that we have at Xprofy is that the work we should begin with small projects and see if there is a ROI there. So instead of starting with a big engagement, start with a $5,000-$10,000 project where you take a small sliver of the problem and then you essentially see how you can address that particular topic. So we've got projects that will begin small, will show the value, and then they will expand over time. And the client is realizing the ROI. But the process, how do you know the person is the right person? So we've solved that problem by building a competitive marketplace. And the way it works is you come to Xprofy, we help you define or articulate the problem. We post it as a project online on the portal, and there are 1,100 data scientists on Xprofy, and they are increasing 5% a week or more. We're seeing explosive growth there. So these vetted data scientists, those who focus, let's say this is a customer analytics problem. So the folks who focus on customer analytics will come back and provide proposals how they will solve that problem. So these very detailed proposals, you might get 10, 20 of them, depending on the how interesting the problem is and what the budget looks like, right? You got to make it attractive for people to provide these responses. So based on that, very quickly as you read through these responses, you'll see who has the best ideas. And often what we find is that when clients are interviewing them, so you can schedule video interviews with 2-3 of them, you shortlist, and we help you shortlist some of the best providers with the best proposals. And then as that discussion is going on, new ideas begin to emerge from those discussions, because there might be some gaps in the knowledge of the provider about your business that are clarified through these discussions, and new ideas might emerge. As you're thinking, okay, the first provider said this and the second said this, maybe I need to combine the two approaches and do something different. So at the end of the project, we haven't had a case where we haven't delivered value, because most of the businesses are struggling to really get the basics right? So there's huge ROI when it comes to building that foundation. That'll help you create these dashboards, establish your metrics, and establish how you're going to move forward as a business.
No, I like the process a lot, because when we look at how you would try to find them, someone like myself finding somebody that would do this, it's really hard. And there are other, I think of, a lot of freelancers. I have all my companies are virtual companies. So everybody's an independent contractor, and, I've leveraged different groups, but I've never, for real specialized knowledge, it's hard to find those people. And boy, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then the part that I really like, Harpreet, that you're saying is, the piloting part. Because what I've found, in working with independent contractors, starting with a project, get it as clear as possible. In this case, what I love, it reminds me the most. One of my favorite for graphic design is 99 Design, and you put a project together. It's a contents and it's a contest type thing, and I mean there's a little bit of that here, but just the brilliant. I would pay $2,500 for a graphic artist to do a book cover for me. Now it's a few $100s, and I got 40 or 50, great ideas. I'll pick a few, work with it, and then, award for the number one and run with it. And it's a great process. And you don't have to start big because it's so overwhelming. I think when the possibilities of what you can do with data, and now what we're doing is we can break it out to bite-sized pieces. We can learn together, and really have it pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by starting small, another advantage is that you have a chance to educate the data scientists you're working with, and then you can really help. They can help you build a roadmap, because that small project will give them a lot of understanding of your business. But if you start big, then the roadmap may be incorrect, right? So it may not be applicable to your business entirely, and so the risk is higher when you start with a bigger project.
Yeah, and often does when you start with a big, you have to pivot, as you talked about earlier. Many of us as entrepreneurs have pivoted a few times, and what I love is working with somebody who knows more than I do, and they can help you. And we start small. They have the enlightened self-interest to have success, have a great ROI early on. Because this is the type of thing that every one of us as entrepreneurs is going to be doing for the rest of our life, is using this data and trying to figure out how we can use it even more effectively.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let me change the segment here. I'm going to go to Book of the Day, and you had mentioned you had a book that you really liked and you thought the fellow entrepreneurs would like as well.
Yeah, so I think given we're living in a competitive world and we're talking about data today. So I thought Tom Davenport's, it's an older book called Competing on Analytics, in which he talks about how certain businesses are more successful than others because they've been able to use analytics in a very effective way. So, he talks about, for example, the casino industry and how Harrah's was one of the first to engage with analytics and began to create a lot of value because their CEO was someone from a PhD from MIT in economics, and really understood how to use data. And so it's a great book to get a flavor of what's happening in this world of analytics.
Yeah, I think it can stimulate a lot of thoughts, because when you start looking, there's so many really good firms that are using it, whether it's at the casinos, the airline industry. It's amazing how well we're all being tracked right now. There's no privacy anymore. But with that, we can look at it from a negative standpoint that people are trying to manipulate. What I really look at it is that they're trying to serve us, and they're trying to understand what we want, who we are, and how can they, in their enlightened self-interest, really be a more service. So, this is a great process. Let me go to the next segment, and this is the application of the day. Harpreet, you're a technology guy, you're an entrepreneur, PhD, you're out there, you're in Cambridge, Harvard, you're teaching. What do you got on your smartphone that would be an interesting app? Now, it doesn't have to be on the data stuff, but an interesting app for your fellow entrepreneurs.
Yeah, perhaps the non-data stuff would be interesting. So I think I'm a voracious reader. I read a lot. I perhaps read a book every 2 days. And so Marvin is a great reader app. So, there's a Mac-based software called Caliber. It probably exists on Windows as well. And Caliber enables you to kind of manage your ebooks on the Mac. And then these books can be sort of sent to your mobile devices. So, I'll download a book, new book I want to read, and then I'll send it, off to my iPad or my iPhone, and that way I have it whenever I have time to read. I'll read it on that.
No, it's great. I mean, I am a big reader. One of the things I'm doing about 3 podcasts a week now, which is it's been tough because everybody's given me a great book I want to read, and I'm usually a 1 book a week guy, and it's hard to keep up with all these great recommendations. But having good readers and tools for that is just so amazing. Let me go to the next segment. And this is resources. And one of the things that you've got a great website, and I mean, it's really, I mean, when you look at it, there's some magic happening, and I want to direct everybody. Let me pull it up on the screen, and maybe you can tell the fellow entrepreneurs how they could use this effectively.
Yeah, so when you go to the homepage, you'll see a button called "I Want to Hire." You can click on that, and it'll give you the ability to tell us what your most pressing problems are, and you don't have to engage in the hiring process right away. It's just something that you sign up, and you'll start getting some content from us, useful articles, and that way, you get to know what's going on with Xprofy and some of the content we're producing. You can consume that, and then there is a second section called the blog, which we've named Xprofy Insights. So we have a lot of thought leaders in the industry coming in and writing on that blog, and we're sharing some of the common problems, insights, discussion on tools and processes that we think are going to help entrepreneurs with their businesses. So those are the 2 things I would recommend.
No, it's great. I mean, the content is pretty amazing. And, I think so many of us are just getting started in this. And this is, if you want to take a step, this is a great way to take a step. Let me do the final segment here. And this is key takeaways. And I've got a lot of notes, and I've had the privilege of spending some time with Harpreet. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart, not because it's technology cool. I call it business cool. That technology cool is the shiny new things. Business cool is something that gives you a huge ROI, and this does. And the key takeaways is, number 1, as fellow entrepreneurs, what we have to do is we have to create a data culture. We got to get away from the gut, as Harpreet was saying, is that so much of us, we pride ourselves as entrepreneurs that we're pushing hard, we're in the business, we understand our industry, our niche, but once you start putting that data in, it's amazing. And really, you're going to find your team embracing that. Define the KPIs, the key performance indicators. All of us have different ones in our business. A lot of times it's revenue driven, client driven, the experience driven, so on. But there are key things in your business that if you track, it's going to be both an early warning signal of what's not working as well as what's working. Track them religiously. Create, as Harpreet talked about, a dashboard. I mean, I love having the dashboard, seeing what's going on. It's an iterative process doing this. And this is really where you've got to find the right person or team to help you. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have Harpreet on is he's got the largest team of anybody out there, 1,100, as he said, data scientists and growing. And the key part, I think the biggest thing is you don't need to be afraid to get started. Pilot, pick one project, get started doing this, because this is going to be a lifelong journey for all of us as entrepreneurs. But I'll tell you, it's going to make a huge difference. Your current clients, they're going to love you for doing it. All those future clients, they don't know who you are yet. They will when you use data effectively. Harpreet, thank you for joining us. All fellow entrepreneurs, go out and execute. Remember, the show notes are at aesnation.com. We've got the transcript, the show notes, all the links so that you can go ahead and really put this into action. Make a difference. Wish you the best of success.
Exceptional, remarkable breakthroughs. aesnation.com